Okay. There's a way to do that.
Be one.
Exactly.
Show me,
Exactly.
That's awesome. I love that. I mean, wow. And so I'd love to, so you're in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So what drove you to go down that path?
Ooh, that's escape. So I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. I wasn't even a junior in high school. My 17th birthday, I got 5 phone calls before 8:00 in the morning. Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Air Force. They all called me and said, "Have you taken the ASVAB yet?" What's that? So no, I hadn't. So I took the ASVAB, scored really well, I guess.
For those that don't know, what's the ASVAB?
Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, ASVAB. And what it is kind of the generic test to see where you would fit best in the military. It's not like an SAT test or anything like that. It's a test that says, what shape is this? All the way to how would you do something? How would you read this graph, which is high-end math, and it does everything in between to really test your knowledge, but also your aptitude at learning. And so you'll have certain jobs open to you in the military based on your scores and section scores. And I guess I did really well. So I had anything open to me. So of course I picked an office job. Bad advice, but my fault. I should have done more research. But I did jump out of planes.
Cool.
So that was cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I want to do something dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I can do this and this. And it was airborne school and I did it. And it was, I did a speech once for the USO of Missouri about airborne school and how that kind of changed who I was. 'Cause I'm actually afraid of heights. I
was going to say, just jumping out of a plane. What's that like? Just,
well, it's more falling a lot of the time, but, that's the one thing I did is I always launched myself out. Some people just kind of bounce and fall out. But back when I did it, you actually had to jump. Now they just have you run out the back or the side. But I was a static line, so I didn't have to pull my parachute or anything. Only had a couple malfunctions ever in the 30 I did. But
so what's a malfunction?
chute didn't open.
Chute doesn't open fully in my case.
Okay.
Or
you get your backup chute though that you're having.
Yeah, I've never pulled my reserve, so
no.
there's a couple things there. But what happened to me was on my last 2 jumps in the Army, I had a new supply officer, so it was his. You do 5 jumps in airborne school, so it was his 6th and 7th jumps were my 29th and 30th jumps, and so I was leaving the military, and he was just getting in, and we jumped opposite doors. And so the timing always gets off because they're supposed to go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, but you end up just kind of jumping all at once. And so each time I'd bounce into him under the aircraft. Oh, it's not as bad as you would think. It's not like his feet hit my chest or anything, but we came out and not literally bounced, but came down right next to each other. But he was always just a little bit ahead of me both times. And so his chute would open and then I would be right above him.
Oh.
And so you only have 1 column of air to hold up a parachute. So half of my parachute would collapse. I'd try to get off his parachute. And so then I'd fall a little bit. And I lost both times the leapfrog. So I hit the ground with half a parachute from 60-ish. I was a lot smaller then, but yeah, it hurt a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Did you break anything?
Not that I accounted for.
Yeah.
I didn't take my boots off for 3 days.
Okay.
So, because I was like, this is going to hurt if I have to put them back on. So I just
left them on
and did the jump the next day.
Man.
Yeah.
So what made you join airborne school?
So I was always afraid of heights, and that goes back into the first time I almost died. I was 3. I fell into a tree, ripped out the arteries in my left arm.
Fell out of a tree or fell
out off a ladder into a tree, actually,
okay.
and then fell out of the tree. But the branch went through my arm and tore a bunch of. Anyway, so developed a natural fear of heights. I did that when I was like 3 years old. That's a whole story that I could drag out for 2 hours. But because of that, I didn't like heights. But every one of my friends was like, "Hey, let's go jump off this cliff into the lake, or let's go do this." And so I was petrified every time. And I realized it was a limiting factor in my life. So I said, I'm going to force myself to get over this. I'm always going to be uncomfortable at heights, but now I didn't used to climb ladders. Now I'll get on the roof if I have to and do all the things I have to do, as a man, but still don't like it.
Yeah.
So what this allowed me to do is overcome the natural, unconscious part of the fear and just bring it forward. So, and the reason I did that was I just didn't want to be controlled by anything. In this case, fear. So yeah, I was literally at 17. The reason I did it, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool and scary and all the things. But I would love to say I had a better reason to do it other than I just don't want to be a wimp my whole life.
Well, that's a hell of a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
Not like I was
challenging yourself to do something outside of your comfort zone, which nobody does anymore. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
So,
Going into life with a little bit of trepidation, a little bit of fear is,
I think fear is a healthy. I mean, we all feel it, and I
Mhm.
mean, I don't think it's necessarily something we should run from. Not always, at least.
right.
I think sometimes you need to face your fears, and you need to go jump off that cliff. You need to go walk into that class you're afraid to join, or go
Mhm.
show up to the workout that you're afraid to
Yep.
do. It's fear is it's such an important emotion, or I don't even know if it's an emotion. It's just part of life.
Mhm.
I
if
think
you use it right, it could be the ultimate motivator.
Exactly.
couldn't
Yeah.
agree.
Like I always worried about the people that said they weren't afraid, because you're either afraid jumping out of an aircraft at certain altitude or you're crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's usually no other option.
No
And the
in-between.
crazy people you don't want to be near.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like, I was blessed to go to combat zones a couple times, but never be in nobody ever shot very much at me in anger. So I always had armor to get behind or something. But all of my buddies that have been in active, really in-depth firefights are like, I knew who to hang out with, the guys that wanted to live. Now they were just as brave, just as strong, and some of them didn't live, but they wanted to get out of there with everybody alive. So they were going to do everything they could to get that way. Whereas the crazy ones, they don't care.
They don't have any regard for their own health and safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes the two look alike.
Sure. Sure.
Especially if you're watching it from the outside. But yeah.
So were you ever deployed? Or
I was deployed twice. I was deployed a bunch of times, but twice to combat, once to Iraq and once to Afghanistan. So,
what years were those?
so Iraq is 0506, and I always get this wrong. I think it's 10 and 11 in Afghanistan.
How long have you been out?
I got out in 14, so
Okay.
I did 23 years and just over 10 years.
It's just you mentioned they reached out to you at 17. Is that when they can start doing it? I thought it was 18.
So you can be solicited by recruiters at 17.
Okay. To kind of prep
because
you
you
to
can
get
sign
ready.
up at 17 with your
Okay.
parents' approval.
Okay.
It used to be 14
Oh, wow.
back in World War II.
Could you
Yeah, like
fucking
crazy.
imagine? Holy cow.
Well, high school wasn't a thing back then.
That's true.
Right, yeah. I mean, if you didn't, you just weren't. You mean, and yeah, and what
When they
was
needed
school?
it at that point. I mean,
Yeah, 14 or 16 or something. But either way,
right.
Yeah.
you know why they choose 17 and 18-year-olds to do all the dirty work, right?
Hmm.
Because you'll just do it.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
think through the
Yeah.
consequence. You don't think through consequences till you're like 25.
Right. Or
Makes sense.
Why am I doing this? Who is this benefiting? Is this
Exactly.
benefiting me? Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
so
a
I
lot.
had the luxury of going to war the first time at 30.
Okay.
So I was an old guy.
Mhm.
And I was a supply guy, doing essentially an office job. I did go out and did a bunch of stuff, but it's kind of where my goal of helping other men started, because I realized I'd been through kind of a rough childhood and all the things I'd been through, but I had 2 kids and I was a little bit older, and I wasn't in a lot of their guys' chain of command. So they would talk to me a little bit, just, hey man, this is what I'm feeling. I'm like, all right, sit down. So my supply room ended up being like a therapy session every once in a while. And it really worked out well because it led me to believe that I really have a passion for helping other men be better. I wasn't able to articulate that until probably 3 years ago, but that's when that started.
Yeah, nothing like you said, like we've been saying, tough times to really bring men together.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it's just this whole, and we've done a few podcasts on it, but like toxic masculinity, the term that gets thrown around, and it just drives me up a fucking wall. Like just the things that they're labeling as toxic. And I'm like, that's just like being a man. Like, so basically everything about being a man is toxic. Like that's the part that drives me crazy.
Well, I would even challenge you to say that they label those things toxic, but that's not what they're talking about. They're actually talking about all the things that make men look like women. And not look like, but act like. The most dangerous thing in the world is a weak man, because he won't ever come at you face to face. You turn around, then he comes after you. It's the guy in grade school that would tell the teacher rather than confront you.
Right.
You know, and not that that's a bad thing. If
there's a time and a place. I mean, there's a
but
reason.
Sometimes you walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, stop," and you just accept the consequences, whether it's you get your tail kicked or whatever. But Jordan Peterson always says, a good man, a good dangerous man under voluntary control is the best man. You know, so know how to put somebody down, know how to do the thing, be able to do the thing, and not want to do.
Right, because I know a lot of some of the most badass dudes I know are the most gentle, kind-hearted, sweetest people you'll ever meet. But if you were, but
under Trevor,
under the right,
super soft spoke Kyle,
under the right circumstances, two of them, literally, that's exactly who I'm thinking of. Like two of my two jiu-jitsu coaches, they are like the nicest, most helping, giving people you'll ever meet. But like they've kicked my ass hundreds of times. They throw me around, they ragdoll me around that mat like it's like I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, and we were talking earlier off air, but that's a technique thing, probably.
Oh, no, yeah,
absolutely.
100%. Doing it for 25 years,
and just being able to, and
they know what I'm going to do, but way long before what I'm going to, they're 6 steps ahead of me in the chess game,
Exactly.
There's no, maybe one day I'll be able to catch up, but I got a lot of learning to do.
They'll slow down.
Yeah.
it's unfortunately it's what happens.
Yeah. That's Kyle said something the other day. It was just like, he's like, I love seeing you guys get better until I have to roll with you, It's like, he said something like that. He's like, I love watching you guys improve until I have to roll with you. And,